Right.
No, what it wants, from my point of view, is, because I'm getting old, is to make sure we train up people who have the capacity to learn how to occupy these leadership roles.
Yes.
And do it when opportunity presents. Here is an opportunity which is presenting. It's nonpartisan, it is transparent, it is pointedly inclusive. There's a timeline that I've got here that, oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of public hearings and public discussions and I don't know what all, that make sure that throughout the calendar year 2011, we're all going to get tired of talking to each other, but it's all going to happen. We will all have that opportunity to talk about what the application form will be like for people who want to be on that advisory committee.
Oh.
We'll talk about that in public.
Good.
We'll talk about how the choices are made from the applicants that do fill out that application. We'll talk about that in public. We will have 3 different attempts at drafting a map, and each of those 3 attempts will be accompanied first by an explanatory set of meetings, 2 meetings at least, where the group, the redistricting group, oh look, under the procedures it says, you know what, we'll have the advisory committee people sit right with the charter commissioners.
Yes.
As if they were charter commissioners. We'll
Yes.
just have them all be one big happy family.
Yes.
And they can sit with us, they can vote with us, they can participate on the the other side of the microphone, so to speak, when we're having a hearing or something. They can be up there in the city council chamber seats and stuff. For all practical purpose, co-equal members of the charter commission, except that they're from parts of town that never seem to quite show up in those seats. Well,
And then
all
what
right.
happens when they don't?
Now, here's the story. All the way to the very end, there are ample opportunities for the public to either watch or discuss with or make suggestions as we go along. We'll have a first attempt, a second attempt, and a final attempt.
Yeah.
And at each juncture, there'll be an interaction with the public. There's also a much more robust effort at the front end to make sure everybody who has any interest at all knows what's going on. That was another one of my pet peeves last time.
Okay.
Last time, as a commissioner, I happened to know the executive director of Centro Cultural Chicano.
Yes.
But I couldn't get past the front desk. Language barrier, culture barrier. Couldn't get through. This guy, I know him very well.
Yeah.
I had dealings with him when I was employed by the Whittier Housing Corporation. And we had dealings with him in the Whittier Community Development Corporation. But here he is, he's in there someplace, and I can't get to him to let him know that there's going to be this great big thing happening that will impact the thousands of Spanish-speaking households in the city of Minneapolis. Because I can't get past the desk, the front desk.
Yeah.
And they don't trust white guys anyway.
Oh, sure.
Because I could be a secret agent from the INS or
Well,
something.
yeah.
So we are addressing that this time around by having everything done in all the languages that the city uses. Every single thing will be in English, in Hmong, in Somali, and in Spanish. Everything. All 4 languages. That ought to help.
Wow.
Also,
Is this a for sure?
yeah.
This is
This is what we
going to
decided.
happen?
We decided.
This
well,
has
the
been
amendments,
decided is going to happen.
The amendments got to pass.
Oh, okay.
If it doesn't pass, we
Okay.
go back to the old way.
Yep.
But it's got to pass. 50% of the people who vote on November 2nd have to vote in favor of this mess. Not just 50% of the people voting for it as opposed to against it. No, 50% of everybody who cast a ballot. So if you don't vote on it, that's counted as a negative vote.
Oh,
So you really have to pay attention and vote for it if you want it to happen.
okay. Now, who votes? And make sure, I'm not clear when you say you really have to vote for it.
All the
Who
citizens.
are we talking? All the citizens.
Yeah, people
So
who vote.
everyone viewing,
Well,
a
presume
resident in Minneapolis
who is a registered voter. Yeah.
and a registered voter.
And remember, you can register at the polls
Right.
and have vouchers vouch for
Right.
you and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's pretty easy to vote if you want to, if you are a citizen.
Yes.
And it does matter, of course.
Right.
Because
So what we're
if you and yours want to be a part of this grand change in how we do
Yes.
stuff,
Yes.
well, best pay heed.
Okay. So when voters go to the polls,
It's on the ballot.
it's on the ballot.
It's on the back. It's a tag into the ballot.
And
paragraph
it's going to
of-
say, what is it going to say on there? Something
it's a
like-
paragraph like this.
Is it? Is it going to have the words redistricting in
Oh,
the,
yes.
in the paragraph? And then they are to vote
Well,
yes.
you want it to happen, you vote yes.
Okay.
Now, we also, what I didn't get to, but I wanted to,
Yeah.
was that I also had some, what Weil calls, I love that, bad taste, about the attempt by the city clerk
Yeah.
to inform interested groups around town. What happened the last time was that we came up against a statutory obligation to have a public hearing to which people of the minority persuasion, people of color, people of other cultures and ethnicities, were specifically invited to step forward and speak their piece.
Yes.
Except that, how did they know that was to happen? Well, they were to have been informed by the city clerk's office.
Yeah.
Well, the list that the city clerk's office had was full of holes. They really did not have a very good list of all
Yeah.
these different organizations representing all these different kinds of people in the city. So when the hearing happened, we got some familiar faces from the African American community. We got somebody from the Native American community, as I recall, but nary a person from the Spanish-speaking community. And we have maybe 20,000 people in the city of Minneapolis that are Spanish speakers in their homes. So that was a pretty obvious miss. And this time, because of the NRP program that we've had, because of the NCR, Neighborhood Community Relations aspect of the latest incarnation of what used to be the NRP program, they've got a master list of everybody and anybody's dog, and they are going to just crank it like nobody's business to make sure that everybody who has an honest need to know will, in fact, know what's coming down the pike.
Right.
Now that's just as important as any other aspect of this reform.
Okay. So that will happen only if that's voted in?
Only if it's voted in.
Only if it's voted in. Okay.
If it isn't voted in, we go back to having 3 DFLers, 2 Republicans,
Yeah.
2 Independence Party people, 1 Green,
Yeah.
and then the chair is picked by the other members
Yeah.
at the end of it all.
Yeah.
And I will, if it goes back to the old system, chances are I will once again be a redistricting commissioner, but I won't be representing the Greens.
Yeah.
I'll leave that
We want
stand
you to
on its
represent
own.
the Greens. Well, we want you
Well,
to be there,
I want to cede that. I want to give that seat to somebody who's like half my age.
Yes, exactly. I see.
That's where
No,
I'm
I have
going.
the same feeling too. Yes.
You know, we
Yeah,
got to
I
get some of
know.
these younger people to pay attention to this stuff. It only happens once in a blue moon, so to speak, but when it happens, it impacts everything that happens after that. So, if we want to have some examples of good leadership coming from these new folks in town, our new neighbors, well, we've got to give them a chance to get their feet wet. Now, I would say parenthetically, going back to the geography angle on this, that our city has been a destination for many migration waves since it started. When the Scotch-Irish came in, they found the French had been here first. When the Scotch-Irish got to be prominent, I mean not the Scotch-Irish, the English and Scotch. When they got into a system of prominence, oh Lord, here came all those Irish. It was the time of the no Irish need apply out there in New York City.
Yes.
And other immigrants from the major countries in Europe came and discovered that they were needed to build all those nice brick buildings downtown.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. Bohemian Flats, over by the university, was on the riverbank, down below where the Washington Avenue Bridge is. And that was a little Bohemia with all the trimmings. I have, in fact, a little cookbook of recipes from Bohemian households in Bohemian Flats. The city eventually made them go away. for sanitary reasons, but it was nevertheless very much one of the cultural enclaves in the city back in that time. Well, then skip forward past the Depression to the post-World War II time, and guess what we get? We get vets, we get the Vietnamese, we get the Hmong, we get now the Latinos from all over, any place where Spanish is spoken. Some people, no doubt, that speak Portuguese. I know you're very fond of Brazil, and there's probably some Portuguese speakers.
Brazil. Yes.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Yes.
And then most recently, people from Africa, from East Africa in particular, and not just little tiny bits of people, all kinds of people.
Yes.
That percentage of our overall population, now approaching 400,000 people, has a big chunk of these recent arrivals who are every bit as American as the rest of us immigrants who came here much to the dismay of the Native Americans themselves.
Yes.
It's also the largest urban Native American population in the country.
It
here
is?
In Minneapolis.
My, I didn't know
Yes,
that.
it is. And so this notion, and of course then we also get people who come here from other parts of the Midwest, from small towns and rural areas, from circumstances that are ugly, like gay and lesbian people who get thrown out of their parental households. I have a good friend that's another geographer who was brought to Minneapolis by his mother from South Dakota and dropped at curbside. There, she said, "That's it for you," and off she drove.
Ah.
As a teenager.
Oh, my.
And he was able to pick himself up. He got into the university. He got into the geography department. He is working on his PhD. He teaches over at the junior college, and he's a good friend. But it was a near thing. Well, we have a lot of people of that persuasion, so to speak, who found their way here and who show up in vast numbers every June for the Gay Pride Parade, the Robbie Ledick too. And at one point we had 4 gay guys on the city council even. I mean, so that assimilation, I would say, probably has been pretty successful by and large. But you notice we still have first generation immigrant families, older people. I once ran a teaching thing for elderly Somalis who were citizens, who lived in the public housing over on the West Bank. And I wanted them, I had read that they had been standing out in front of the polling station at 6 o'clock in the morning to exercise their American franchise.
Yeah.
And well, but they didn't really know how. Well, so I thought, you know, in for a nickel, in for the dime, let's teach them how to participate in precinct caucuses and ward conventions and city conventions, so they have a little more of a dose of what it's like before you get to that election thing. And to do this, it took me and somebody who could translate what I said into just plain old English, and then somebody who could translate it into Somali, and then somebody who could translate it into Oromo, and we did this. Now, I deliberately picked the oldest people because of the clan system, because I was not able, at the time I was a resident council president over in Charles Horn Public Housing, and I was doing well with the old folks, but the younger Somali folks were busy bees. They were going to school, they were going to work, they were rushing about. I mean, you couldn't catch them. So I thought, you know what,
That's the population I used to teach.
I'll get the oldest ones who are the most senior and get them to tell the younger ones to come to the precinct caucus, come to the ward convention, come to the city convention. Of elderly Somalis at the city convention that year in the DFL party. And the one thing that I found amusing was that after all this translation effort and everybody smiling and nodding and waving and I don't know what all, when the meeting broke up, the men who had been sitting on one side all got up and went over to the women who were sitting on the other side, clearly asking them what they were supposed to do. So go figure.